I never imagined I'd pay off my husband's $300K debt, only to be kicked out, but I had a secret. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The moment I realized the life we had built was crumbling right before my eyes. My palms were sweaty, fingers trembling as I clutched the eviction notice like a lifeline. The bold letters screamed at me, a grotesque reminder of our shattered dreams. How had it come to this? I had given everything to pull us out of the dark, only to be thrown into deeper shadows. There I stood, heart racing, surrounded by boxes and memories. Each one bursting with laughter, arguments, whispered promises, and long-forgotten dreams. The air was thick with silence, so heavy I could hardly breathe. Gone was the warmth of David's embrace, the flicker of hope in our shared laughter. Instead, there was just the haunting echo of my heartbeats. David had always been my rock. Or so I thought. I remembered how I had fought for him, how I sold my grandmother's antiques to pay off his debts, thinking this would be the answer. Little did I know, it was merely the beginning of our downfall. Every dollar repaid felt like nails being driven into my heart. A sacrifice for someone who had betrayed me in every way that mattered. I found myself staring into the abyss of his choices, wondering how I could have been so blind. I needed to know why. Why did David never mention the investor who was willing to help? Why take everything from me just to walk away? The memories played in my mind, a flicker of light in the swirling darkness like a painful reminder of the love I thought we had. As I thought about how I would pick up the pieces, I remembered the strange old woman at the flea market. The one who claimed to see my future in a tarnished mirror. "Trust your instincts," she had whispered, her voice raspy and filled with an eerie wisdom. My instincts were screaming now, demanding attention. I had to uncover David's secret. But what if it was more sinister than I ever imagined? The door creaked open behind me. I turned, heart in my throat. It was David. He looked different, hollow, worn, shadows heavy beneath his eyes. I couldn't read his expression, but something in me shifted. Anxiety twisted in my stomach, but so did a glimmer of hope. Could he explain everything? "Lisa," he started, voice trembling. I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on us. But before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from the hall, drowning out his words. I flinched, head snapping toward the sound. My breath hitched. What was happening? Where did this lead? Would I find the truth or face more ruin? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The crash echoed again, reverberating through the stillness of the empty room, shattering the fragile atmosphere that had settled between us. I could see David's eyes widen, a flicker of panic overshadowing the weariness etched on his face. He took a step back towards the door, instinctively retreating into the shadows where the light dared not reach. "What was that?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. I scanned the dim hallway, nerves coiling tightly within me. "Maybe a neighbor," he began, but the words faded as a series of hurried footsteps approached. The door burst open. It was Alice, my dearest friend who had been my confidant through the turmoil. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes wide with urgency. "Lisa. I've been trying to reach you. You need to come with me now," she said breathlessly. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart racing. "Just trust me," she replied, glancing anxiously back down the hallway, as if expecting someone to follow. I turned to David, searching his face for anything that would anchor me to the moment. "What about you?" I asked softly, my voice cracking under the weight of what lay between us. "Go," he urged, though his eyes betrayed a silent plea for me to stay. I could feel the pull of conflicting obligations, the loyalty to a man I once loved fiercely, now a specter of betrayal, and the instinct to flee with my friend who stood on the brink of an answer. With one last lingering look, I stepped away, heart pounding. We raced down the stairwell, Alice leading the way, urgency coursing through her. The familiar streets felt foreign, and my mind spiraled. Where was she taking me? Each step seemed to resonate with all I had lost. We soon arrived at a small cafe tucked between two storefronts, a haven of comfort amidst the chaos swirling around me. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods filled the air, but nothing could quell the war raging in my heart. Alice pulled me into a corner table, her expression earnest and worried. "Lisa," she said firmly, "I overheard some things. David, he has a dangerous figure from his past, someone who might not take kindly to being crossed. The debts, they were only the beginning." Panic surged within me, drowning the remnants of hope. "What do you mean?" "I thought I was helping him, freeing us from all the weight." Alice squeezed my hand. "You were, but David didn't disclose everything. There's more to these debts. He didn't just borrow money, he made promises he couldn't keep." As the reality sunk in, I felt a tremor in my chest. Was David tangled in something darker? A lie deeper than I could comprehend? Anguish washed over me, mingling with anger. I could still hear his voice, trembling and off-kilter. What had he hidden? Suddenly, Alice's phone buzzed on the table, drawing our attention. Her expression shifted to one of dread. "I need to take this," she said, stepping outside to answer. Left alone, I felt the weight of the enormity before me press down harshly. My thoughts spiraled back to David. What was his life like behind the curtain, intertwined with the shadows I'd never known about? The worries began to gnaw at me. Had I truly done everything without understanding the cost, not just to me but to him? Just as I reached for my phone, a message popped up, unfamiliar and chilling. "Stay away from him, or you'll regret it." The word sent icy fingers crawling up my spine. I glanced outside, searching for Alice. The cafe that had once seemed a refuge now felt like a gilded cage closing in on me. My heart raced. Who had sent this message? Was this the ghost of the debts? Or did it stem from something darker, far more sinister? Suddenly, the door swung open. David stood on the threshold, his eyes darkened with something primal, desperation etched in his features. "They're here, Lisa." The world narrowed to a single point of terror. My heartbeat punctuated the silence, echoing my growing dread. What did this mean? The danger I had once tried to help him escape was now creeping closer, threatening to engulf us both. "Who's here?" I whispered, but deep down, I feared I already knew the answer. My breath quickened, a chilling realization dawning on me. Here was no way out, no easy answers. Surrounded by the looming shadows of David's secrets, my understanding of our reality felt fated to unravel, spiraling toward an uncertain doom. Would we face what was coming together, or would the darkness tear us apart once and for all? The instant David stepped into the cafe, the atmosphere shifted, the scent of coffee transformed into something acrid and suffocating. I wanted to leap from my seat, to run to him, but my body felt heavy, anchored by a fear I couldn't shake. "David," I breathed, searching for reassurance in his stormy eyes, but he seemed distant, haunted. "They're here," he reiterated, his voice low and urgent as he gently pulled me from my chair. The world around us faded, reduced to the thudding pulse of impending confrontation. I could feel Alice slip quietly back inside, her face morphing from concern to fear upon seeing David's ashen complexion. "What do you mean they're here?" I demanded, but my voice trembled, revealing my desperation. "Who is here?" Before David could respond, the cafe door burst open again, and a group of 3 men strutted in with an unsettling swagger. The tension slipped into an all-consuming silence, the unmistakable vibe of danger tinging the air. They were the kind of men who filled a room, not with warmth or kindness, but with foreboding. The leader paused, scanning the space with a cold, calculating gaze that settled on David and then me, as if sizing up the prizes and threats within. And that heartbeat, everything I had fought to understand about David crashed down around me. Those debts Alice had feared were more than just numbers, they were chains fashioned by people who wielded power and fear like weapons. "We should leave," Alice whispered, clutching my arm, her grip tighter than before, but as we made to move, David held up a hand, his voice strained. "Wait. This is my mess. I need to handle this." "Your mess. David, we're in this together." "You promised me," I started, the wild panic in my gut morphing into indignation. "Together?" He snapped, but then his voice softened. "You don't understand how deep this goes. I didn't want you caught in it." "Not like this," the leader of the men stepped forward, a sinister smile cutting across his face. "Caught in what, David? Is she the one you thought you could save, the one who could pay it all off and make everything right again?" "Shut up," David growled, but the words fell flat. I could see the fissures in his resolve. Fear clawed at my throat as realization broke over me like a chilling wave. I was entangled in a conflict far beyond my understanding. "David, please, what don't I know?" I looked from him to the men, desperate for context, for understanding. What had I unwittingly walked into? But before he could speak, a shadow moved beside me. "You sure are brave, Lisa," the leader mocked, his eyes alight with malice. "Thinking you could play the hero. When you're just another pawn in this game." The warmth I had borne for David in my heart felt distant, replaced by an unsettling chill. The unsteady ground beneath us seemed to fracture further as David's face twisted in anguish. "I won't let them hurt you," he said, stepping closer, forming a barrier between me and the looming threats, but his determination felt like paper against a storm. "Look at him, acting all noble," the leader jeered. "You have no idea the lengths he's gone to for that money. It's not just about the debts, it's about the promises. Did he tell you what he did to secure your safety? How many boundaries he crossed?" David's shoulders slumped. I could see the weight of the truth hanging around him like a shroud, and dread clenched my heart. Could he have done something terrible, something that couldn't be undone? There was a beat of silence before the leader continued. "You thought giving him money would erase his past. But we're all still here, waiting for our due. And trust me, we always collect." Alice pulled me back into the few remaining threads of hope. "Let's go, Lisa. This is our chance." But all I could do was stare at David, whose desperation flooded the room like poison. "Please," he turned to me, his eyes fierce with a resolve I couldn't fathom. "Just trust me one last time." In that moment, just as I opened my mouth, the cafe door swung wide again. But this time it wasn't just the men, it was a violent surge of chaos as patrons screamed and scattered. My gaze darted to the doorway, where another figure stepped into view, cloaked in shadows but undeniably familiar. "Lisa." A voice called out, cloaked in urgency, and I felt the ground beneath me shift yet again. "Mom?" I gasped, disbelief gripping my heart. "How did you find me?" But just as swiftly as hope ignited within, I felt the world narrowing again, the danger coiling tighter around us. David's face paled, and the leader's sinister smile widened as he sensed the vulnerability in my growing uncertainty. Now, caught between the complexity of family ties and a love tangled in secrets too dark to decode, the reality of my situation pressed down, demanding a reckoning. I had wanted to be brave, to help David, but in the face of looming threats, I wondered if I had instead opened a door to a reckoning neither of us was ready to face. And as I looked between David's strained expression and my mother's concerned gaze, I realized that this was only the beginning of a confrontation that would dig deeper than the debts, deeper than betrayal, unearthing truths that could change everything I thought I knew. The chaotic scene felt like a nightmare unraveling in slow motion. My breath hitched as I processed the sight of my mother amidst the frightened patrons scrambling for safety. "Mom," I whispered, half expecting her to vanish. But she stood there, an unexpected lighthouse against the storm brewing inside the cafe. She rushed towards me, her expression a mix of fear and frantic relief. "Lisa!" she cried, arms outstretched as she enveloped me in a hug. For a moment, her warmth shielded me from the harsh reality surrounding us. But that security was fleeting as I glanced over her shoulder, where David stood, rigid, eyes darting between the men and us. "Mom, it's not safe here," I urged, my voice strained, every instinct screaming at me to protect her. But her eyes sharp, perceptive tore through my facade. "What's going on?" she asked, confusion knitting her brows together. The urgency in her tone shattered the moment that had brought me solace. I felt my heart race, torn between the man I had come to love and the woman who had always looked out for me. Before I could answer, the leader of the intruders chuckled darkly, stepping closer, his presence suffocating. "Looks like we have a family reunion," he sneered, redirecting his dark gaze to my mother. "And here I thought your little girl was too foolish to get involved in this mess. That she was naive enough to think she could untangle him from something like this. She's nothing like you think," David shot back, his voice trembling yet fierce. "If you lay a finger on them and what? You'll protect them?" The man's voice dripped with scorn. "Spare us the hero act. You've already put them in danger." There was a trace of glee in his taunting, like he thrived on the emotional turmoil he was sowing. That I turned to David, desperation coiling around my heart. "What is he talking about? What have you done?" The heaviness in his gaze told me everything. Words flashed through my mind: betrayal, debts, guilt, but the one that suffocated me the most was sacrifice. He had shielded me from a truth I hadn't been ready to hear, and now that dark shadow loomed, ready to swallow us whole. My mother gripped my arm tighter as if she sensed the flickering fear within me. "We need to go," she insisted, her voice cutting through the growing din, but I couldn't move. Not while David stood hovering on the edge of his own abyss. "You need to tell me the truth, David," I implored, catching a glimpse of the turmoil within his eyes. "I wanted to protect you," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I thought I could take care of it off everything. But I was wrong. This goes deeper than I ever imagined." His honesty hung heavy in the air, rippling with regret, and I felt a pang of empathy, despite the crushing fear. "Let's just leave," my mother urged again, her voice trembling. And finally, it felt as if time expanded, stretching taut in the silence that had enveloped us until it snapped under the weight of David's next revelation. "Do you want to know the kind of man I've been?" he asked, his eyes pleading with me to understand. "I didn't just borrow money. I dealt with things I shouldn't have. People I shouldn't have." His confession sent a chill through my spine. "They don't just want their money, Lisa. They want a price that I can't afford to pay. And you're a part of it now." My heart raced, the implications were staggering. I was just a pawn on a game board concealed in shadows, and what had begun as a promise of love and trust had morphed into something sinister, beyond my control. The leader interjected with a malicious grin. "Smart girl, learning her role." He pointed a finger at my mother. "But let's cut to the chase." His gaze was hard, and I felt the world tilt on its axis as his smile widened. "We're here to collect on a debt that's long overdue, and you two can't be seen as liabilities, David," I breathed, desperation thrumming through every nerve ending. "We can fix this. We can find a way out, back to the real world, sweetheart," the leader taunted. "They'll never let you go. And once the final payment is due, you'll regret ever stepping in." "Shut up," David snapped, a burst of fury emerging from his otherwise desolate expression as he stepped protectively toward me. "You will not touch them." The tension sharpened, an electric pulse zipping through the air just as the cafe door burst open again. Another figure emerged, bearing the weight of the world on his shoulders. I received the call. "What the hell is going on?" Ross, David's friend, shouted, his eyes scanning the chaos. "An ally or another threat?" "I couldn't tell." "I am sorry, Lisa," David whispered, stepping back as if the revelation was too heavy to bear alone. "But I'm afraid this is just the beginning." An unsettling silence fell as the realization washed over me. His was a battle of lives, a web of choices tangled in greed and desperation. And we were all caught in its deadly grip. Then, as if the room itself whispered in sync with my fear, I felt a strong hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone in this." Ross' voice was steady as he met my gaze, determination sparking between us. But the flicker of hope was soon doused as the leader began to laugh, a cruel sound that clawed at the air. "That I wouldn't be so sure," he taunted, a gleam of malice in his eyes. "This game is only starting, and you three will play your parts beautifully. Just wait and see. The stakes are higher than you can ever imagine." And as his laughter echoed against the walls, I realized we were teetering on an edge, one that threatened to plunge us into a darkness we might not survive. The conflict had deepened, twisting into a tempest of uncertainties. The light of hope barely flickered, and I found myself questioning the very bonds that had once tethered us together. How much more could be unveiled before this storm washed everything away? The minutes stretched like hours, each second heavy with the weight of unspoken truths and unrelenting fear. The laughter of the leader reverberated in my mind, a chilling reminder of the stakes now laid bare. My heart ached for clarity, for safety, but the chaos pummeled us. Everywhere I turned, I saw faces distorted by fear and uncertainty, and in that moment, I felt the fabric of our reality begin to unravel. "Mom, we have to get out," I urged, tugging at her as I locked eyes with David. His face was a mask of despair, and I suddenly felt the full force of the betrayal. I had thought love could shield us, that ignorance was bliss, yet truth had crashed over us like a tidal wave. "Wait," David said, taking a step towards the leader who watched with a predator's keen eyes. "If you let them go, they'll do whatever you want. Just let them leave. They don't need to be involved in this. It's too late for that, boy," the leader sneered, his demeanor shifting from amusement to cruelty. "You think your sacrifice matters? They're already entangled in your mess, and there's no way to sever those ties." He waved a dismissive hand, but the notion that I was a victim made my blood boil. "We can pay you, whatever you want," I shouted, desperation piercing through the haze of fear. "Just let us go." "Ah, the wishful thinking of the naive," he replied, his voice laced with scorn. "Money, sweet girl, is never the only currency in play here." His words hung in the air, ominous and thick, wrapping around us like a noose gradually tightening. For the first time, flip-flopping amidst all the anxiety, I dared to glance at Ross. His expression was steely, but behind those eyes lay compassion, an understanding of the darkness we faced. "We need to act," he said, glancing quickly to my mother, who was trembling, her strength slowly being eroded. "David, tell me how I can fix this before it's too late," I begged, urgency pulling at my words. The tension between us created a taut thread, one that I hoped would lead to the other side of this chaos. "That I thought I could handle it. I thought it wouldn't touch you," he murmured, voice cracking again, revealing the depths of his turmoil. "But they won't let go. I owe too much, and worse, they've taken things from me, already taken things." I froze, the implications settling heavily like lead in my chest. "What do you mean?" Before David could reply, a crash echoed through the cafe, pulling our attention. A chair toppled over, sending patrons scattering further, another murmur of panic rising. And then came the voicey, a haunting echo of our situation. My father's old friend, Frank, stepping in from the clamor, his gait easy but fraught with urgency. "What's this about a debt?" "Frank!" David shouted, disbelief coloring his tone. "Get out of here. You don't belong in this." "We can help, but we need transparency," Frank spoke, voice steady but urgent. "Lisa, listen to me. You have to trust me. I've seen this type of mess before. A thief taken a lot from David, and it cannot spiral out of control. Not like before." Suddenly, I was thrust back years, a world of whispers and family shames, of debts that had swallowed our lives whole. "What do you know?" I demanded, clutching to the tentative thread of hope. "I know that a perceived worthlessness can turn a man into a monster. It's not just the money, Lisa, it's the choices that led him here." Frank's gaze shifted to the leader, unyielding. "But it doesn't have to end like this. We can negotiate. The leader's laughter grew more sinister, a bubbling delight. "That's rich, coming from someone so weak." "Strength comes from standing together," Frank replied, not flinching. "David has allies you don't even know about." "Allies? You think they'll line up in the face of darkness?" The leader stepped forward, defiance intertwining with amusement. But that spark ignited something deep within me, a flicker of fire fueled by my desire to protect my family. If they'll try, then so will I said, speaking louder now, challenging the weight of our odds. I will not be just collateral in this game. David looked at me, a flicker of gratitude igniting behind his uncertainty, but dread shaded his gaze. I could sense the perilous balancing act we were on. Our whispers of courage were drowned within the cacophony of their power plays. The leader's smile darkened, and he stepped closer, scanning my mother's trembling figure before locking eyes with me once more. You're braver than I expected. But here's the twist, he may have allies, but you're only a fragile leaf in this storm. And when the winds shift just as the impending threat hovered, a sudden thud echoed from the back of the cafe, a pulse ricocheting through the air. The door burst open once more, and we turned, hearts in our throats, as a familiar face stepped through, a face that bore the weight of 100 secrets, and I felt the world tilt again. Lisa, she cried, her voice hoarse with urgency. You have to get out now. Staring into my best friend Jenny's wide eyes, adorned with fear and a hint of resolve, I realized that our network of allies had unexpectedly expanded. But the uncertainty hung in the air thick as it had before, a twisting web of choices, realities, and looming dark threats. Jenny, what do you mean? I whispered, caught in the tides of chaos as the storm intensified around us. The murmur of the world cloaked our minds, and there, hanging in the balance, a new revelation awaited. The sound of Jenny's voice scraped against the tension like chalk on a blackboard, jolting me out of my spiraling thoughts. Her urgency bore a weight that pressed down on my chest. They've been looking for you, all of you. You're in danger here. We can't stay. In stark contrast to the dark authority of the leader, her light brought with it a sense of groundedness. It was the embrace of friendship, a reminder that amidst the turmoil, we weren't utterly alone. But even that solace was clashing against the gravity of our situation. I sought reassurance in my mother's eyes, and fought against the dread that threatened to swallow me whole. Jenny, what do you know? I demanded, my voice quavering but resolute. It felt critical to bridge that shaky line of hope, to grasp at the flickering embers of possibility we so desperately needed. There's no time for explanations now, just trust me. She urged, glancing at Frank and the leader with the fire of powerlessness brewing within her. I overheard them making plans. They've got people everywhere, and they've been watching waiting. If you stay, they'll take you. Take me? I echoed, but the truth yawned open beneath it. We were already caught in a web of threats and shadows. Fear unfurled inside me, wrapping around my spine like a constricting vine. We can't just run without a plan, then let's make one. Jenny insisted, her voice spurring me on, even through layers of fear and uncertainty. But amid that whirlwind feeling of panic and hope, I felt the urge to turn toward David, to see the conflict unfolding in his eyes. David, is this true? I asked, urgency pushing the words from my lips. We can't let them. Staying here only deepens the hole. He interjected, anguish lacing his tone. Torn between familial bonds and his own burdens, he stared down at the ground, guilt etched into his every feature. I thought I could protect us. I thought this was the right choice. I brought this into your lives. What choice? I pressed, anger and fear grappling with one another in my chest. You didn't choose this, David. We're in this together now. We have to pull together and fight back. Silence fell for a fleeting moment. The noise around us faded as I felt that shared moment expand, a fragile connection of unspoken understanding and commitment. Something ignited in his eyes as he processed my words. But before he could respond, the leader's voice sliced through the air again, chilling and unforgiving. Such youthful optimism, he sneered, his gaze dancing across the tense group. You think you can just run? You think you have a choice? In that moment, anger welled up inside me, fueling my determination. The more I was pushed, the fiercer I became. I will fight as much for David's debts as for my family's future. You can't silence us. Fighting? Oh, darling, the leader chuckled darkly, stepping closer as if to drown me in his looming menace. People like you, fragile and naive, are destined to be crushed under the weight of reality. You have no idea what you're getting into, but not everyone stood in shadows. Frank stepped forward, drawing the leader's attention for a short while. You can underestimate them, but I know the courage of those you think are powerless, he ground out. Let's talk about how you're running your empire. You think you're untouchable? Frank's voice held a surprising steadiness, a call to arms that might just rattle the leader's monumental confidence. I felt a rush of admiration for him, as if against our shared bleakness, a glimmer of rebellion shone through, and then, in the very heart of all that chaos and bravado, Jenny's hand gripped mine, a physical tether that held my reality together. We should reach out to others. We can't just stay and hope it goes away, she affirmed, her pulse quickening, mirroring my own. The suggestion bore the weight of glory and sacrifice, one that felt fragile yet hopeful. If we could rally the allies David had, if we could rally our strength, it could ignite something powerful, a sense of community that could confront the darkness looming over us. Jenny's right, I said, echoing her resolve, feeling it ripple through our group. We need to reach out. Connect with those willing to fight alongside us. If we get somewhere safe, David said, his voice steadier now, I may know people who can help us. It was the first ember of solidarity, the spark that could create a flame, but the leader loomed like a broker of doom, ready to extinguish it. What a delightful little dream, he laughed, a sound steeped in condescension and malice. But here's the catch: once you make your move, there's no going back. You'll have stirred the hornet's nest. Are you ready to face the swarming consequences? My heart thundered, and the fears clawed at my mind, the prospect of loss, of betrayal, of spiraling down into deeper darkness. Yet something surged within me, a defiance that whispered against the doubt that we have to be. Because what's the alternative? I replied, my voice steady with newfound conviction. Staying here only leads to our ruin. As we gathered our resolve, I glanced over at my mother, who seemed to soak in this evolving hope. She looked fragile but somehow bolder, inspired by the campfire of bravery we were all igniting. But then the door behind us swung open again, cutting through our resolve like a blade. A figure stepped in, cloaked in shadows, familiar and unsettling. A man who framed the edges of my childhood memories, but one I had never expected to see again, a piece of my past I thought lost forever. Lisa, he said, his voice like a crack of thunder, you need to come with me now. The room held its collective breath, and for a heartbeat, all I could do was stare at him, questions swimming in my eyes. There was a choice ahead, but also a chasm between the light of hope and darkness. Would we grasp this opportunity, or would we unravel? The silence shattered as that name echoed in my ears. Lisa. It hung in the air, heavy with significance and memories, a sound both foreign and achingly familiar. I trembled, uncertainty washing over me like a cold wave. The man standing before us was my father, lost and believed to be gone. My heart raced, beating erratically against the confines of my chest as the flood of emotion surged. Dad? I finally managed to croak out, pushing back the swell of disbelief. How could he be here? After all these years of whispers and bitter silence, was this the resolve I had been seeking? Was he the ally we needed? Please, you don't understand, we don't have time for questions, he urged, his voice taut with urgency. They're closing in. You're not safe here, and neither am I. What do you mean? Who is coming? I asked, my words tumbling from my mouth as desperation clung to each syllable. People who would tear us apart. Who want to control every aspect of our lives, he explained, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. I know where we can find shelter, a place where they can't reach you, your father. David whispered, disbelief etching lines onto his brow. I could feel the shadows gather again, palpable undercurrents of distrust surging forward among us. He's not here to help, the leader sneered, his confidence unyielding despite the chaos unraveling. Isn't it a tragic tale, that the very man who abandoned you all these years now comes to save the day? The chill in his words pierced through my moment of hope, igniting the emotional turmoil that had already been brewing in my chest. The truth of that accusation stung, a bitter reminder of the chapter one had fought so hard to close. I had spent so long reconciling my identity, carving my own story out of the absence he left behind. "Stop," I said harshly, suppressing tears that threatened to spill. "What matters is that he's here now." "Is he?" The leader's lips twisted into a smirk. "Or is he one of them, ready to isolate you? Everyone has a price, sweetheart, including family. Don't think this brings safety. It only exposes you more." I glared at him, torn between the weight of my father's arrival and the visceral danger around us. "I will choose to extend my hand even in uncertainty. After everything, I still have the right to decide my fate." "Think carefully, Lisa," my father warned, his voice low and intense. "You don't know the depth of the risks we'd be plunging into." "I don't care. You can't just expect me to go back to pretending you don't exist." I shot back, the frustration and fear combusting into something raw as I faced my father for the first time. "I need you now, but I can't forgive the past without knowing why you left." His expression faltered, pain clouding his features, but before he could respond, Frank stepped forward, asserting a steady anchor amid the storm. "Whatever your family dynamics are, it's best to put them aside for now. We either leave together, or we risk losing everything." The tension thickened, and I felt the weight of every gaze in the room. In that singular moment, the width of possibility fused with uncertainty. The doorway to our futures hung open, while the threat loomed closer. "Fine," I agreed, taking a deep breath to steel myself. "I'll trust you, Dad. But this isn't one-sided. If we're to face whatever danger awaits, I need your truth." The promise felt fragile, resting on a knife's edge, but it was the only bridge worth crossing. "Think of your mother," he urged, looking toward her, and I followed his gaze. My mother, ever the resilient spirit, looked torn between relief and an unresolved history painted across her features. In that moment, I wanted to embrace them both, our reckless leap of faith forged from desperation. But before we could act, a loud crash burst through the door we had been shielding ourselves from. Wooden splinters flew as the shadows surged forward, a squadron of figures spilling into the confines of our room. My heart dropped. The dinner bell had sounded, and our last sanctuary had just been invaded. "Time's up." The leader grinned, a wicked satisfaction warming his voice. I felt the collective fear, the panic-stricken breaths of those gathered around me, but something else flickered in the space between fear and chaos, a stirring resolve. A plan had yet to form, and in the depths of uncertainty, amid the onslaught, an unexpected camaraderie ignited. As the figures advanced, I grabbed Jenny's hand, raising my chin and squaring my shoulders. "Run! Now!" I shouted, the urgency spilling into every quaking pulse, rallying our band of misfits in the face of impending confrontation, and with that, we bolted for the back exit, hearts racing, unfurling toward the unknown and away from the tethered fears that had bound us. But just as we reached the threshold, as hope rushed to awaken along with the adrenaline, my father's call reverberated through the chaos, striking my heart like a challenge. "Lisa. If you leave now, you may never come back." His words carved through the clamor, sinking under the weight of their gravity. A decision awaited in the distance, an emotional cliff unraveling beneath my feet, groaning under the burden of what lay ahead. Would I carve my own path, or would my legacy be built on remnants of those I feared? Time was slipping away, but the choice was still mine to make. The echoes of my father's voice ricocheted in my mind as I hung in the air between action and indecision. It had been countless years since that voice had resonated with love and authority in my life, and now it seemed to draw a line in the sand. I could feel the urgency bubbling in my chest, the need to escape this prison of fear that had held my family captive for so long. But there was another pull, a weight of unresolved emotions tethered to my father, an unspoken dialogue lingering between us. "Lisa, please." He sounded desperate now, a plea born of love and a fear I couldn't readily ignore. "You don't understand what's at stake. If you leave now, I can't guarantee your safety. I can't lose you again." My breath hitched as memories rushed in of abandoned birthday parties, quiet phone calls that went unanswered, and dreams painted gray with absence. I clung to Jenny's hand, squeezing it tightly, as if she were the last connection to rationality in my spinning world. "Don't you see?" I said, half to him and half to the chaos unfolding around us. "Staying means giving in to the very thing that tore us apart. I need to move forward. I need to know how to face this future on my own terms." But even as I spoke, a dawning realization wrapped around my heart like a vice. What if staying wasn't merely an act of defiance? What if it was the cage in which my father had kept us all too long? The leader's shadow loomed ever larger, pressing against the shreds of hope we had still been clinging to. Before I could act, a hand shot out from the throng of figures, connecting with my father's shoulder and spinning him around like a doll made of porcelain. "You think I'd let you run away with her? After everything you brought us into?" "Think again." Panic surged in my heart, and I felt free-falling uncertainty clawing at the edges as I weighed my father's past against the future that stretched ahead. An awful thought struck me, rooted in the depths of my mind. Perhaps retrieving my father meant awakening chains that I had thought long shattered. "No!" I screamed as I pulled away from Jenny momentarily, breaking free of her grip to reach for my father, but Frank was at my side, pulling me back before I could dive deeper into the danger. "Trust me," he insisted, his grip firm. "We can't risk everything yet. Please, let's move." The room thickened with tension, breaths mingling with the stagnant air as figures moved closer. I saw the flicker of understanding in my father's eyes. She was fighting against whatever bond he once deemed necessary, wanting me to pack my own life within the confines of his resolve. But no more. Amid the turmoil, I caught a glimpse of Jenny, who suddenly turned and pulled me toward a side entrance, a small wooden door hidden behind the cluttered framework of discarded boxes. "This way, quickly!" The leader's voice roared. "There is nowhere to run, Lisa. You think you can escape the past? It'll always find you." Yet I felt the call of instinct surging through me, a flicker of hope driving my feet forward. Jenny and I barreled out of the side door, my lungs filled with desperation, and my heart pounding in rhythm with survival. Just outside, the night air was heavy and dark, a cloak draped over our hasty exit from chaos. Before I could comprehend any further, a chilling scream pierced the air behind USA break in reverberating wills that brought a sudden halt to the chaotic sounds around me. Dad. The desperation burst from my lips before I even realized it. Time slowed as I turned, torn between flight and a desperate desire to cling to what was left of my family. The hesitation nestled deep within my chest roared to life, battling against the instinct to escape and preserve some level of safety. "Lisa, go!" David shouted, his voice ragged with concern. "Well, find him. Just run." But that was the catch. Could I run ever again, even if I buried my past, with my father in imminent danger? Suddenly, as if tuned to my turmoil, the sound of sirens sliced through the air, closing in upon our tiny refuge. The lights twinkled like stars, seemingly far away but ever so hauntingly close. They signaled both hope and danger, an impending arrival that terrified me. "Fight or flight," I mumbled, my heart racing. I stood at the fated crossroads of my journey, the clamor of the sirens swirling around me like a chaotic orchestra conducted by fate itself. In that moment, I had to choose a decision that could redraft everything I believed to be true about family, safety, and love. But just as despair began to swell anew, a loud thud erupted behind me. Whirling around, I saw my father staggering in the doorway we had just escaped from, struggling against the weight of the shadow closing in on him. "Go, Lisa!" he shouted through gritted teeth. "You have to live. Live for your mother, live for yourself." His words echoed against the chaos enveloping us, like a siren song for the lost. Hope and fear collided within me, intertwining in a desperate embrace, but as Frank tightened his hold on me, urging me to retreat toward the darkness of safety just down the street, I caught sight of something glinting in my father's hand, something he had brought back from his own harrowing journey into the void of our past. A key. Suddenly, all of its voices, the accusations, the painful history seemed to swirl away, and a new current of determination surged within me. I would not let shadows define my fate. Even if the brink felt tenuous and perilous, this thread of connection to my father could still weave its way into a brighter future. Choosing in that split second, adrenaline propelled me forward. "Dad!" I called, desperate yet determined. "I'm coming back. I promise." And then, the sirens crescendoed, and the night transformed into an unforgiving battlefield, pulling us into its depths as the walls of uncertainty closed in. But the choice was made. I would face whatever came next, knowing that my heart was tethered to both my father and the truth I longed to uncover, even if it meant surrendering to a destiny that was no longer solely my own. The world around me blurred into a cacophony of noise and confusion. The sirens wailed like banshees, signaling an arrival I both dreaded and secretly clung to, a flickering hope buried beneath the chaos. I ran, feet pounding against the concrete, with Jenny right beside me, a silent companion in a storm that threatened to engulf us both. "Where are we going?" she gasped between breaths, her eyes darting back toward the ominous darkness of the doorway from which my father had emerged. But even as she spoke, I could see the hesitation washing over her. The risk felt suffocating, the promise of safety that once lay ahead now blurred by the weight of everything left unresolved. Don't know," I stammered, fighting back tears. "I just can't leave him. I won't let that be how it ends." In an instant, Jenny stopped, grasping my wrist with a fierce intensity. "Listen. We need a plan. Running into the unknown isn't a plan. We can't just keep going in circles." Lisa. I met her gaze, the determination etched in her features, a flicker of the clarity I desperately sought. "But what if there's a way to save him? I can't let my dad be caught alone." "Not again. Your dad could be a liability. We don't know what's waiting back there, or who might follow us," she tried, but I refused to let the fear override my instinct. "People can change, Jenny. Just please. Trust me." The weight of my voice hung in the air, mingling with the dread and desperation clawing at the edges of my consciousness. Before she could respond, the distant echoes of hurried footsteps chased us like a predator lurking just out of sight. The urgency lit a fire beneath me, and in a moment of impulse, I turned back, toward the doorway that had just been a gateway to uncertain peril. "Lisa, wait." Jenny's voice was faint, a tether I chose to sever, rushing back to the haunting interior once more. The moment I crossed the threshold, a myriad of emotions flooded over me: past, the pain, the love wrapped tightly in armed resolve. My father's grappling presence seemed stronger now amidst the chaos, like a lighthouse illuminating a tempestuous sea. "Dad!" I hollered, the sound ricocheting off the walls, begging for a response. My heart drummed in my chest, pulsing with hope and fear, anticipation and despair. The light flickered overhead, casting shadows with a life of their own. And there, caught between the tangible and the ephemeral, stood my father as he faced the advancing figures. "Stay back!" he shouted, voice hoarse and unwavering, eyes alight with an energy that belied my memories of him. Vulnerability transformed into a wall of protection. Yet, as I stepped closer, I saw the depth of the fear he carried, and then the telltale sign of a tremor in his hands. "Dad, I'm here. We need to go, now," I urged, desperation creeping into my voice as I glanced at the encroaching threats. "Lisa," he breathed, and there was sorrow entwined in his voice, heavy and thick. "It's too late for me. You have to get out. You have a life. No. I won't leave you." The tears I'd fought to keep at bay spilled over, hot and unrestrained, as I rushed to his side. The sound of angry voices and footsteps drew closer, the impending threat culminating like a storm about to break. "What's wrong with you?" he shouted, harsh and pain-eating, a reflection of everything I had wanted to shield myself from. "I will not lose you again. I can't bear that." In that moment, his desperate words echoed of time lost, an aching reminder of the gap that forged our relationship into chiseled stone, crafted by years of neglect and silence. My chest tightened as I struggled to understand the depth of his anguish. "Please," I cried, "I can't keep running. We have to face this together." Just then, a figure blinked into view, a dark silhouette in the half-light of the doorway. I squinted against the darkness, apprehension curling in my gut. It was him, Frank. His expression, sharp and focused, promised danger, contrasting against the chaos swirling in the air. "Get away from him, Lisa," he warned, hand poised, ready to unleash whatever tempest of violence he had planned. "Frank. Stop," I shouted, gripping my father's arm as if by doing so I could prevent the storm from breaking loose. But then, as if time slowed, I noticed inside the plethora of chaos that seemed to beckon my family closer to the lips of danger, a glimmer at the edge of my father's pocket. Another key, yet this one was different. I could see the words etched against its steel surface, a name. My mother's name. Instinct urged me forward, breaking free from this whirlwind of urgency. "What is that?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. "It's nothing," my father choked out, pain slicing through his voice as he reached blindly for it. I stepped dangerously closer to the advancing figures, breath hitching with fear and determination. "If we can unlock the truth of our past, maybe we can finally break free of all this. Dad, please." In that split moment of hesitation, he looked at me, really looked at me, yes, searching for something buried deep beneath years of unspoken grief. Another shout rang through the air, this time stronger, jolting me back. "Make your choice, Lisa. Time's up." Frank's outline loomed like a black cloud on the horizon, foreboding and relentless. As the distance between us dwindled and my father's decision hung in the balance, I whispered, "We can do this together. Let's face our past and win." Just as he reached for my hand, the sirens crescendoed once more, filling our eardrums with chaotic fervor, almost drowning my father's reply. I could sense the caverns of our history beginning to crack and splinter under the weight of hope. But before I could interpret his response, a chilling scream erupted from Jenny outside, the sound like glass shattering through the stillness, piercing my heart with dread. "Lisa! Run!" Suddenly, the world flipped, and realization washed over me. Whatever came next would shatter not only the silence of our family but the fragile threads of trust that had barely held us together. "No!" I screamed, adrenaline darting through me as the darkness encroached and the keys weighed heavily in my grip. I was out of time, caught between choices and consequences, living in the throes of an unfinished story, the last chapter still unwritten. Every choice counted from here on out, and every decision held the weight of everything I held dear. But in a universe of uncertainty, one thing was clear: we couldn't escape what lay beyond the door. We had to walk through it, unsure yet resolute, to face the shadows that bound us each to our past. I stood at the threshold, the chaotic noise around me muted into a low, throbbing pulse as I stared at my father. The weight of the moment pressed down on my shoulders, like a mountain threatening to crush me under its stone-cold reality. He was here, after all these years, lost and found, just as I was. But could I trust him? "Lisa," his voice broke through my apprehensive thoughts, filled with urgency and regret. "You have to understand, this isn't easy for me. I've made mistakes." "Then let's fix them together," I said desperately, willing him to see my sincerity, my desire to reclaim lost time. "I can't just leave you. We can't let them take you." But just as the words left my mouth, Frank stepped forward again, his expression fierce, as if ready for a battle waged not just against the men encroaching on us, but against all the ghosts of our past. "You'll risk everything, Lisa. You still don't see the stakes, and neither do you." I spat back, courage igniting within me. "We're not leaving him behind, Frank. If family matters, truly matters, then we stop running. We face this." My father's brow furrowed at my indignation, a small flicker of pride against the backdrop of despair. Yet just as I hoped to embrace that connection, the leader's shadow loomed larger, calling out, "I think it's past time we cleaned up. You're way too curious for your own good, little girl." The sarcasm in his words shot daggers of fear deep into my heart, and I steeled myself, holding my father's hand tighter. The light around us dimmed further, thick with tension. "If you're going to fight," I said, my voice barely a whisper caught in the gravity surrounding us, "then you better fight for something. Let's not be pawns in a game we didn't choose." In that moment, a ripple of understanding crossed my father's face, and I could see him weighing his life choices against my desperate courage. Maybe he had spent so many years trying to shield me from his mistakes, believing that distance was safety when it had only been abandonment, but now, the arena shifted. "Lisa," he started, his eyes glistening, raw and open. "I wanted to protect you, but I was wrong. I am sorry." A fragility settled between us, one filled with the promise of healing and mending what had been broken. But just as his confession spiraled into the air, another sound cut through the chaos. A windshield held captive by the winds of fate shattering into millions of pieces echoed from outside the cafe. My thought seized me, heart raced. Where was Jenny? "Go!" I shouted at my father. "Get to safety. We can figure this out." But he was frozen, caught in a moment of realization that perhaps he had been running from the truth of me, of the depths of family bonds threatened by the darkness surrounding us. Then, he finally took a step back into the shadows, preparing to retreat. "I can't let them hurt you. You don't know what they're capable of. I'll face this." An eruption of desperation choked his voice, and I felt the pull of his past weighing us both down. No. I pleaded, desperate for a different ending. "You can't handle this alone. We can face it together, as a family. Please." In that moment, resolve unfolded like petals being kissed by dawn. A daring notion emerged within me. "If you trust me, then give me the keys. Dad, I'll hold on to them. They're your past, and I'd never run away with them. But I need you to face yours for us." My words hung heavy. And I felt the collective breath of the moment. We were on the cusp of clarity while chaos threatened to consume us. He hesitated, the key in his trembling hand a symbol of what might already have been lost, a burden of a past he paid for with silence. But as I gazed at him, I knew I was asking him to not only confront what lay ahead, but also to confront himself. With a deep shuddering breath, he nodded slowly, pressing it into my palm. Then let's finish this together," he murmured, and a spark ignited, a flame fanned by love against the suppressing darkness, and in that exchange, the air changed around us, transformed from desperation to solidarity. I might have taken on the world alone, but family, through anguished years and painful losses, remained ours to cherish despite everything. In that instant, Jenny burst through the doorway, her breath labored, determination etched into her features. "We have to go, now." "Jenny," I began, but she shook her head, seeing the key in my palm. The understanding passed between us. The years spent together had stitched a bond that no darkness could sever. "No more running," she said, resolute. "It's time we confront this together." Then, just as the night threatened to close in, I saw a glimmer of something, an ally moving behind us, a new facet of our truth rushing to our aid. Ross. Hurrying through the throng, his presence felt electric and unwavering amid the pandemonium. "Over here!" he shouted, motioning for us to follow. In a breath-catching moment, I turned to my father, my heart swelling with a collage of fear and hope, understanding that we were on the brink of a transformation. "Stay close," I urged, the resolve tightening within me. "Trust each other." With that, together we surged toward the door, hearts pounding in unison through the unknown, leaving behind the shackles of fear. Outside, the air tasted different. It smelled like the bittersweet remnants of our past mingled with the shocked resolve spilling into our future. The silhouettes of our past lives crowded around us, whispering for acknowledgement as we plunged into the uncertain territory ahead. Sirens wailed in a cacophony of impending confrontation, the final confrontation that would reconcile love and trust against the darker currents that threatened to take everything from us. As we regrouped together, our hands clasped, I realized that standing in unity meant we were declaring war against the very shadows that endeavored to overtake us. We had time, the present breath in our lungs, the light of our conviction behind our hearts, and the unbreakable bonds of family would illuminate our way. Amidst the chaos, as the night gathered, we turned to face the gathering storm, prepared not only to fight against the shadows but to explore the tangled web of our truths, theity sacred with potential. We would not flee, but choose our dado, reclaim our lost spirit, our inherited strength. And as the winds roared around us, drowning out the past in dark shadows, we joined forces, stepping forward together, and in that moment, I never felt more alive, knowing, finally, that our family's story, a tale whispered through silence and regret, was about to be rewritten. The echoes of our journey would ring loud and clear, drowning out the haunting shadows, and as we ventured forward, I whispered to the winds, "This is just the beginning."